Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Trade 101 training. My name is Kirsten Bayer with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University, and I will be your moderator and technical support for today's session. So if you experience any technical difficulties during the session, or you just have a question, feel free to reach out to me via the chat. A couple housekeeping things, like I just noted, that we need to go over before we start with the training is that I wanted to just iterate that this session is being recorded and it's going to be posted on Illinois WorkNet. Within about 48 hours, you'll see the recording. Gives us some time to get the video up and edited if need be, and then up on the website. So please be patient with us with that, but we are always good about doing it within 48 hours. So you'll have access to that. And then also, if you see in your email, I did resend the calendar invite to all of you, and attached to the new calendar invite for everyone today is the slide deck for today in PDF form, as well as a handout that Sheila Sloan has provided us for this training. So feel free to access those via your calendar invite. I'll also put them in the chat momentarily here when I'm done speaking. So you'll have access to those if you'd like to print them out or follow along in any manner with the presentation today. I also wanted to note that for accessibility reasons, we do have the ability to have closed captioning on this Zoom session. So if you need closed captioning or you just feel you benefit from it in any way, please feel free to turn that on. You can do so by pushing the CC or live transcript button on the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you'll see the availability to click show subtitles, and you should be able to see those at the bottom of your screen right now. And then I also wanted to just prompt everyone and remind you that we do have your mute and unmute your microphones disabled right now. We ask that you just refrain from unmuting those so you're not able to right now. We will give you the ability to do so at the end when we have time for a live Q&A session. We'll allow you to unmute yourselves if you want to. But up until then, we just ask that you direct all questions to the chat. We're also doing this because we are going to be saving the chat and the transcript of all the questions within the chat. So that way we can type an FAQ at the end and post that on the website. So you can refer back to it if you forget the answer to your question or the answer to someone else's question as well. So we can refer back to that as well. So we just ask that you post any questions in the chat for the duration of the session, and then we'll allow you to unmute yourselves at the end. And I believe that's it for housekeeping items. And I'm going to hand it off to Sheila Sloan, who will be presenting with us today with Susan Boggs.
Thanks, Kirsten. So I am Sheila Sloan. Susan Boggs is here as well. She is going to work on, there she is. She's going to do a lot of the answering of the questions in the chat as we go through as much as possible while I'm driving the presentation. I want to thank Kirsten and ISU team for all of their work in helping us set all of these training sessions up. They've been very valuable to us in doing this process. I also want to thank the trade unit team, Susan Boggs, Crystal Bigelow, and Lori Graham. They have been very instrumental in proofreading and providing materials and documents and information to include in all of these presentations that we're going to have. They've fixed my typos, my grammatical errors, or corrected issues that I might have put in there or forgot to take out from previous versions. And I want to thank Andy Lastasso. He is our technical assistance guy here at DCEO. He's helped us with getting some of this set up as well. I also want to thank all of the attendees. I know this is going to be very, very information overload, especially for those of you who are new to trade or have not had a lot of experience with it. So I'm sorry for all of the information today, but just know that we are going to go in depth in further training sessions that are upcoming, as you've seen on the schedule, and you've got the invites. Hopefully you'll see we're going to cover some of these topics in more detail later. So just be patient, but if you do have questions in the meantime before the presentation on something you need to know an answer to, call us. We will be glad to help you. We can walk you through anything that you need to do. And as Kirsten said, the recording in the chat Q&A will be posted. We will send a link out to everyone when that gets posted. Like she said, post your questions in the chat. This presentation is meant to be kind of a high-level overview of the trade program in general. We do give a little details on some of the requirements and some of the information, but we will cover more stuff later. Hopefully the invites were received by everyone who needed them. If there is someone who did not get it that you feel needs to be included in our trade distribution list, please pass that information along in an email to myself or Susan Boggs, and we will make sure that they're included on the list. I guess that's all I have for all of that. So we will get started on our Trade 101. I apologize, my camera's on my laptop in the middle of my two screens, and my presentation is on the other screen. So I probably won't be looking at the camera much today. I will be looking at my presentation. So Trade 101, what everyone wants to start out a Thursday morning with. So first of all, people want to know, what is the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program? The Trade Adjustment Assistance Program, or we call it as TRADE throughout their presentations, as you'll see, and the Alternative Reemployment Trade Adjustment Assistance, ATAA or RTAA, as we call them, our acronyms. You'll see a lot of those. It helps trade-affected workers who have lost their jobs because of increased imports or shifts in production outside of the United States. The Trade Act was first implemented in 1974, and it has been amended numerous times throughout the years. And workers who experience a partial or total separation from employment due to these increased imports may be eligible to apply for trade, and that offers such a variety of benefits and reemployment services for those trade certified workers, much more than just the regular dislocated worker program under WIOA. And it helps them to become more suitably employed from after their layoff. They can get training, but our goal is to help them get back reemployed and into a job making a suitable wage. The first step in the process for these workers is that they need to be certified through a petition process through DOL. And once they are certified, then each individual worker is eligible to apply to receive more of those trade benefits and services. And there's an eligibility process for that. Currently, there are 4 programs in effect under the trade program. And one of the handouts, the side-by-side comparison attachment that we have provided for you, we got that from DOL just a couple of days ago. It's a very good handout that walks you through. It kind of tells you the group eligibility, what type of workers are eligible for each of the various programs. It'll talk about the TRA information and how many weeks of that is available. It talks about training waivers, talks about funding, state administration, the job search relo information, case management funding, and it talks about the ATAA, RTAA, and health coverage tax credit. So it's a very good handout that you can use as a resource. I'm not going to go over it in detail because we just really do not have time. So there is a 2002 program, and we list here for the certification numbers 69,999 and below, or 80,000 to 80,999. So each group of certifications kind of ties to a particular program, and you'll see those listed under there. And we have, which type of workers, and I see we failed to put it under the 2002 program. I apologize for that. The 2002 program is for manufacturing sector workers only. So we will fix this slide on here, but it is also on your handout that we provided. The 2011-2015 program are kind of like, they're like identical programs, and they do cover certifications 81,000 to 97,999. When they did the last year, when they issued the new regulations, they kind of grouped those together and kind of grouped some programs together, but some of the rules applied, but when they didn't, they can't apply. So it's very confusing, but just if you got any questions about it, you can always ask us. But here's the certification numbers. That will be a key thing that you need to watch when you're dealing with a potential participant. What is that certification that they are eligible under? That'll help drive what rules that need to be followed. And then of course, now we have the new 2021R program that came about because Congress did not reauthorize the trade program before July 1st of this year. So any certifications that are 98,000 plus, and they are for manufacturing sector workers only, they will have to follow the rules under the 2021R program. And there are some significant differences between 2021R and the rest of the programs. And we have a highlight slide on that, so we will cover those and we will cover them in depth in another presentation in the future. So one thing to note, the trade program is set to expire on June 30th of 2022 if Congress does not act to reauthorize it. So we're hoping they do something. And then here is we have a link here to the DOL website where that side-by-side comparison chart is located. So feel free to go there or use the copy that we have provided in the link in your chat box there. So the first step in the process is for a petition to be certified. So we're going to walk through the petition certification process. A petition should be filed anytime after there are worker separations or if there's a threat of a separation that begins at an employer. We usually like it to be no later than 1 year after the earliest date on which the workers lost their jobs with that employer. And that is to make sure that every employee that could be benefited by this is benefited, because when they do the petitions, you'll see later that they will go back 1 year from the date that the petition was filed to kind of give that impact period for those employees who may have been laid off for that. So a petition can be filed by any one of these following people: a group of 2 or more workers from the same firm, a certified or recognized union or duly authorized representative of the group of workers. The employer can actually file it, or a state workforce official, which would be like a DCEO rapid response person or DCO person. Lori Graham is the person who we direct most of our petition filings to now at our office. She's doing an excellent job at getting those filed and getting some certifications for us to help the workers. Or an IDES secured IDES person can file a one-stop operator or one-stop partner program like WIOA or WIOA local workforce area can file. So, there's several ways to file a petition for these workers to give them these benefits or the potential for these benefits. And then once it has been filed with DOL, the Office of Trade Adjustment Assistance initiates an investigation to review all of the facts and everything that's been provided in the materials to see if that petition can be certified for those group of workers. And here is the website. We say link, but the links don't always work sometimes in some of these presentations. We don't know why. But there is the website for where you can file a petition online. We will go through the petition process next week and how to do that and walk through the actual petition. When you do file a petition, please make sure that you send it to Susan Boggs, myself, and Lori Graham so that we are aware of the petition being filed. Now, how do we get notified when there are petition determinations? Well, USDOL will email us a determination email. It has all the information about it, how many workers are affected based on their investigation. It has the actual certification attached to the email. And when we get that, and then IDES is responsible at that point. Once we notify, we'll send the email out to our rapid response staff so that they know to provide trade-specific rapid response. I'm not speaking well today, am I? And we will provide a list of the affected employees to the LEAs once we receive that from IDES, and then rapid response staff coordinate and conduct those workshops for those workers. IDES sends out the notices to their regional staff. They obtain that list of the affected workers from the company, and they will send it to us, and then we will notify the LEAs of those. They will notify any states that have workers that reside outside of Illinois, and they will send out the individual outreach letters to the affected workers. And there's a coordination effort between IDES and the DCO rapid response team and LWIAs to set those workshops up and get those letters out in a timely manner. So if there is a denial of a petition, then DOL basically says the eligibility criteria have not been met. If there is a denial, there are several ways that the workers or whoever filed a petition can actually seek to have it reviewed again. They can request an administrative reconsideration, a judicial review, or the workers can just seek reemployment services through the WIOA dislocated worker program. If it is denied, the DCEO trade unit, we will notify the rapid response team and the LWIA of any denials that we receive. So one of the main things that needs to be understood by the career planners and those working with the potential participants here is understanding that certification petition timeline, and all of the information is in the actual certification document itself. Generally, your petitions will cover all workers, all members of a specific worker group. They're laid off during that period, the impact period, which is usually 1 year before the petition filing date and generally 2 years after the date of certification. Those dates can change depending on the type of petition or certification that it is. If it's an ITC petition, or I should say certification, if it's an ITC certification, then sometimes those dates don't always line up with that particular period. So just be mindful of making sure that you look at the dates that are in that certification document. The impact date is the earliest date that layoffs have or that are covered by the certification. The certification date is the date that DOL certifies that petition. And the expiration date, generally it's 2 years after the date of certification, but there are some exceptions to those dates. And they will be, the actual expiration date will be noted. All of these dates will be noted in the certification. So a career planner must know these timeline dates. It's impact date, certification date, and expiration date. That helps them to determine if that participant is a part of that worker group and when they must meet those enrollment deadlines by being either enrolled in training or to be waived from the training requirement by that deadline. So this is kind of a confusing statement, but this is exactly how it is. The enrollment deadline is either the later of the last day of the 26th week. And for 2021R folks, it's the 8th week after the week of issuance of the certification of eligibility covering that worker. So that certification date of that petition, or the last day of the 26th week or the 16th week for the 2021R participants after the worker's most recent total qualifying separation. We call it the 2626 deadline, and that is for petitions up to 97,999. The deadlines are 8/16 for petitions of 98,000 plus. I know it's confusing, but we do have a trade date grid that I can actually send out to you that you can use to determine those dates as well. I'll make a note to send that out. So there's a note here. We have some slides later in the presentation that, see those slides for the program differences for that 2021R piece of it. I bet our slide numbers are wrong here because we changed and added some slides. So I'll have to fix that, but they are later in the presentation. So here is a conclusion paragraph, and this is where you'll find your dates. This is from an actual certification. So it talks about, after careful review, it lists the, what kind of activities this worker group was engaged in. I just wanted to show the impact date for this because it says these people who became totally or partially separated from employment on or after September 17th, 2017. That is your impact date. That's the first date that someone could be laid off and be eligible under this certification. If they were laid off on September 16th, they do not fall under eligibility for this certification. Through 2 years from the date of certification, and all workers in the group threatened with total or partial separation from employment on the date of certification, through 2 years from the date of certification, okay, so there's your expiration date, okay, which is, and I should have done the certification date. The certification date is this date. It was signed in Washington, D.C., 9th day of October, 2018. Certification date, that's what that is. And then it says through 2 years from the date of certification. So you would take 2 years from October 9th of 2018. So your expiration date is October 9th of 2020 for this particular certification. So that should help. But if you look for that conclusion paragraph in that certification, you will get your dates. One of the primary benefits to trade that is different from dislocated worker program, and this is what a lot of people rely on to allow them to go to training, is the income support, which is the trade TRA benefit, which is trade readjustment allowance. Basically, a cash benefit that's equivalent to what a UI payment would be, but they are entitled to that under certain circumstances if they're attending training or they've been waived from training or enrolled in training within that, if they've done that within that deadline. So to be entitled to it, they have to make a certain wage within, the certain number of weeks of employment. All of the determinations for eligibility for TRA are made by IDES. We do not try to advise people on any of this because we are not aware of all of the rules related to it. So we refer people to IDES to get all of that information. I just wanted to put this in here so you can see this, but there are 3 basic types of TRA. There's basic, which is the first one. That is payable if the participant is issued a waiver, is enrolled in training, or is participating in approved training, has completed training, or, again, has the waiver. That's the first one. Then there's additional that can be paid out within, there's so many weeks of eligibility within a period of 78 weeks if they're attending training. And then there's completion for those folks who need to, their training is an extended period. And, I'm not going to read through all of this. You can read this, but just know that these 3 TRA options are available to participants in training and participants of trade. So once a petition is certified, then the rapid response is to be provided to workers who are laid off, or if they've been threatened with layoff. As soon as it is known that people may be laid off, then that's when the rapid response process begins. So they will give them information on the dislocated worker program during the initial rapid response meeting that they have with them when they've been threatened with layoff. So that's the regular rapid response, and that is usually to be provided per the regulations upon petition filing. So that's why we notify, the folks as soon as we can that a petition's been filed. Then once it's been certified, then that's when trade specific rapid response comes into play. And at that specific trade rapid response is where the benefits, rights, and obligations document, or we call it a BRO, it's form number 001. That's when that document is presented and read in its entirety, and the participants sign that form and date it. If it's a 2021R participant, they would potentially need to also fill out the 210 bona fide application, form 004, because that is applicable to them. They have to do that within the 210 days so that they're eligible for that additional TRA payment. But later on, we'll cover that later. And these rapid response events, they're provided through, there's outreach meetings that are conducted by DCO Rapid Response, IDES, and OES staff to conduct those rapid response meetings. A lot of them are virtual these days. I don't know if anybody's doing any in person. So I know it's a challenge, but I think some of them have gone very well. And then here is a link to some rapid response PowerPoint presentations that we have out on WorkNet. They have done some presentations and then some voiceovers on them that they present at these meetings now. I assume they're going well, but we wanted to provide them so you can look at them if you want, so you can see what's being presented at these meetings. So there are situations where you have a participant who is certified for trade. They reside in another state, say Indiana, or it's an Illinois resident and they relocate to another state, and then these people are requesting trade benefits and services. Whatever state is responsible for paying the unemployment insurance claim, that is what we call the liable state. And if someone seeks services out at a state outside of where the liable state is, then that state would be acting as the agent state. Both states need to work together to make sure that that person receives the benefits that they are eligible for under trade. And the liable state has to provide the approval before the agent state can actually move forward with giving all, signing off on all the approvals and all of that. But just remember, the liable state has to provide the approvals for all of the training or any services provided to that person. And if you have a situation like that, feel free to reach out to us. It can be kind of confusing, but we are here to help you if you do come across that. And sometimes we may pass an agent liable participant on to you if we need assistance with them, if we get contacted by another state. But we'll help you. Sorry, I have to take a drink here. Okay, so there are eligibility enrollment requirements for every participant. It must be documented that the work is a part of the affected worker group, and that they have a qualifying separation date. And that information generally will come from the Illinois Benefit Information System, or we call it IBIS, and the affected worker list. You work with the IDS trade unit if there are questions about any discrepancies between that qualifying separation date that is showing up on, could be various documents. You know, you could have a layoff letter, you could have the worker list with dates, but work with IDS trade unit because those dates need to be consistent everywhere that they are in IWDS or any other documents. So a participant meets the enrollment deadline, the 2626 or 816 for 2021R participants, if they have a qualifying separation date that's in between that impact date and the expiration date of that certification, and it's been verified by the IDS trade unit. The layoff reason must be lack of work or plant closure. It can't be quit, can't be fired, can't be any other reason other than those. You know, if they receive a waiver from the training requirement because they just can't get enrolled in training within that deadline, that's how they can meet the deadline. Or they've been enrolled in a trade approved training within 30 days of the start date of the training, or they've been enrolled in training not yet started. That's a status in our system. And merit staff approval must be prior to the 2626 or 816 deadline for 2021R for it to be, you know, for them to meet that enrollment deadline. Workers must file a timely UI TRA claim through IDS trade unit. And there are some cases like these extenuating circumstances. There are several that can't be used depending on the program that the person is eligible under. If they miss that deadline for some reason, we will cover those in a later training session, but there are some that are available for that. And we've got some on this next slide that kind of walks through on the various programs what kind of extenuating circumstances can be used. So here they are. If you grant an extenuating circumstances for the different laws, here's the different ones. The 45 days is available to all of them. And we have these described in our policy, you know, what those mean. And we will provide those later as well. There's equitable tolling is available across all of them. The 60 days upon proper notification, if for some reason they didn't receive notification from IWDS that they were eligible or potentially eligible for trade, that's, you know, the 60 days. That's available under the 2009 and the 2015. There was a state good cause available only under the 2009 law. And then there is federal good cause under the 2015 law. So this is a good chart to kind of, you know, keep in mind, like if you do have one, which one can you use? But equitable tolling is across all of them and the 45 days as well. But if you have a situation, we can walk you through that as well. And we'll present more information on these later. So some of the eligibility documentation that needs to be provided or available in the customer file or available on site at the local area, a copy of the certification, and that will help the career planner look at that. They'll know the dates, they'll have any information about the worker group and all that to make sure that that person is eligible under that certification. Any amendments to the certification, the documents showing the attachment to the certified worker group, which, you know, can be a name on an official employee list or copy of a layoff letter, and you must have this IBIS documentation that reflects this information. The two that we see most often that does provide the information we need are the UI basic claim inquiry and a TRA claim detail. And we will provide copies of those when we go through the eligibility chapter. And I think that's not the next training, but the following one. We will provide copies of what those look like. And you must document the LMI data on the trade impacted job. and collect any other required co-enrollment documentation. I mean, this is not all of the documentation that needs to be in the file, but this is just basic eligibility documentation that must be in there for sure. And once you're meeting with the participant at the enrollment meeting, some of the tasks that you're going to do are you're going to do that trade WIOA standard application. It's called the IWDS guided application. You're going to complete the individual employment plan, the IEP, Form 14, and you're going to complete the 210 form if it's applicable, and that's only for 2002 and 2021 participants. So just keep that in mind. There's and then there's case management services that have to be provided to the participants. There are specifically 8 in the trade regulations that are required to be provided, and those are listed on the first page of Form 14. They are the comprehensive and specialized assessments that includes diagnostic testing, in-depth interviewing. You have to develop the IEP, which is of course one of the steps you're doing. Information on training available in the local and regional areas. Financial aid information, short-term pre-vocational services, individual and group career counseling, employment statistics and information on the labor market in the local, regional, and national area, and supportive services. Those do not all have to be provided to that participant. They have to be offered. If they are offered, then provide the date that they have been, you put the date they're offered. If they're provided, list the date they're provided. If the LWIA does not provide those, they can be provided by partner programs as well. We encourage referrals to partner programs to provide these particular case management services, if the participant needs them. And there's also 2 items at the top of under box 14 on the IEP, the registration for Illinois Job Link and the registration for Illinois WorkNet. We do require those as well. And we will cover the IEP in depth in a later session. So at this enrollment meeting, also the worker will sign the local release of information document. Most LWIAs have some sort of document that allows them to get a release of information from training institutions for the documents, the degrees that they earn, or any kind of things like that they need for that participant. They're going to do basic skills testing for all people except like the English language learners. And some of those there's a test for the TABE test, as we all have heard about, the TABE 11 and 12 for reading and math. There's a comprehensive adult student assessment systems, CASAS goals, reading and math also. One of those could be provided. For English language learners or English language acquisition, there's 3 tests here that can be provided to those participants. To meet the requirement for the testing. You're going to complete a full assessment of that worker's skills and abilities. We have a transferable skills checklist that we will provide at a later training. And then all required eligibility documentation is reviewed and then put in the file to make sure that you have everything you need to serve that participant and meet their needs. Some of the documents that the worker needs to bring for this meeting that you're going to copy and put in the file, a birth certificate. And this is not, you don't have to have only the birth certificate. There is a document we will provide that does have the list of documents that will provide documentation of like the eligibility for authorized to work, or to prove kind of who they are. There's a whole list of documents, and we will provide that at a later training session. We do have those available, and we will give those. A marriage license, if there's a if there's a name change, a photo ID to verify their address, or social security card. If they're not a U.S. citizen, then there's a document that shows that they're authorized to work in the United States. For veterans, you need the DD-214. Selective service information for any male born January 1st, 1960 or after, and the trade certified company layoff letter. Some people have this layoff letter, some people don't have them. It's not that they have to have it. It's not definitely required. These are just some of the idea of some things that they need to provide. And if your local area has a career training research packet, then that completed packet to help you walk them through the services they're going to need, or if they need training. So the case management services for trade participants, they are entered on both the in IWDS on both the WIOA and trade application, and it is based on the certification that the participant is covered by. So those participants covered by petitions or certifications numbered up to 97,999. We've shown you what you do here. For on the trade application, you're going to enter a trade case management service record, and you're going to add episodes to that service as appropriate and as you provide new case management services. The reason why we have to do this is because under all the programs up until 2021R, our case management services can be funded by our trade program. For 2021R participants, the trade case management services cannot be provided through the trade funding. We have to fund that through our rapid response side of our funding mechanism under DW, which is kind of what we used to work under. And then it switched last year, and then now we have to add that component back. So if on the WIOA application for those participants, that you'll enter a career planning, case management, 1DC or 1AC service that's funded by WIOA, and you'll continue to add those episodes to that as they occur on the WIOA side. If you're providing some WIOA services to that participant, then that's when you would add those particular episodes. If you're only providing the trade case management to that person, then you would put those episodes on trade case management. But you do need to add the career planning case management service record on the WIOA application. And any additional services that are provided by WIOA, then you have to add those particular services on the WIOA application. If they're getting some child care or supportive service or vehicle repair, glasses, anything that they're getting served by WIOA, you would add any of those services on the WIOA application. They don't go on the trade application though. So for any new participant that is TAA WIOA co-enrolled, you must enter that career planning case management service upon the initial application entry, and you would only add any additional episodes to that as they're getting WIOA services. If it's trade, then you would do the trade. And so, like I said, trade funds can't be utilized to support the case management activities for those participants covered under certifications 98,000 and above. They have to be paid by the WIOA. And we'll be issuing new funding under the 1AC grants like we previously did to provide that case management service for those participants under that. And those participants are the ones who are under that 2021R. If you do have anyone like that, here's how you do that. Under the TAA application, there's no entry for case management services. And under the WIOA application, that is where you would again do the career planning case management service upon the initial entry and add new episodes as you're providing case management to that particular person. And also, again, add any additional services being provided, the supportive services, childcare, anything that they're getting funded under WIOA, add those in there. And you would add the additional episode to the case management service record. So as we talked about before, if someone can't meet the enrollment deadline and they need to be issued a waiver, there are certain circumstances that that worker can receive a waiver from the training requirement. They have to meet one of these three conditions. One of them is health, and that is if the participant is unable to participate in the training due to their health. They broke their leg, they want to go through CDL training. Well, can't drive a truck with broken leg, but maybe it's going to heal here in a few weeks, and they're going to be able to do it. So if their health prevents them from attending that training right now, we can issue waivers for that. Enrollment unavailable. Say if they come in right now, for instance, then the training doesn't start until January, but their deadline is coming up at the end of October. We can issue a waiver for that participant as long as they have a training plan in place, and they're going to start in January. So we can issue a waiver so that they can start receiving their TRA benefits, and then when they are ready to, within 30 days of start date of that training program in January, then we can do the enrolled in training at that point. So it just kind of helps them preserve their TRA benefits during that period of time when they just can't get enrolled in training. Training not available. I've been here been looking at trade files since 2014. I've never seen this one used. Generally, this would be if there's no training available, the cost is just totally unreasonable, or the state does not have any funds. I don't know of an instance when we would use that unless we would, get our funding drastically cut severely, but I've never seen this one used. Usually we will see the enrollment unavailable as the most common one used, and sometimes we do have some health. So once again, a waiver can only be issued if that participant has a fully developed training plan in place. They know where they're going to training, they know what they want to enroll in, and the 6 conditions have been met for approval of training. We have to have all of that information and a lot of forms in order to be able to issue that waiver. It must be issued before that deadline unless there's extenuating circumstances that exist for that. And we initially issue the waivers for a period of 60 days at the start. They can be extended under certain circumstances if it's necessary, but they cannot be extended past the eligibility period for TRA, for basic TRA for that participant. So if you are enrolling someone in a waiver, here's the forms that will be required for merit staff approval of that waiver. We will have to have the appropriate Illinois waiver from training completed, the form 14, which is the IEP, the form 6, verification of trade training enrollment, your form 5, which is your transportation subsistence assistance document to see if they're eligible for reimbursement of travel. Form 6D or 6E, which is your program tracking form that lists the courses that must be taken. And the documents need to be uploaded to IWDS, and you'll request your merit staff approval for it. And then each waiver must have 30-day reviews during the entire period of the waiver. It has to occur every 30 days, and that is just to determine if the conditions that the waiver was issued under are still in existence. So, someone was issued a health waiver and now they're better and they've been cleared by the doctor or whatever, they can enroll in training. So then that condition would no longer exist. And then those waiver reviews must be recorded in IWDS. It's under the waiver status record that you would enter those. There's a button on there that says 30-day review. And then you would add a case note to document that contact every 30 days. There are situations where the waiver criteria changes. You can discover this during a 30-day review. The change reason must be documented if there is one, and you would complete the waiver criteria change section on the waiver form, and you would submit that along with the IEP modification form 14A to you would upload those documents to IWDS, and you would submit it for state merit staff approval for that waiver criteria change. There's waiver extensions under limited circumstances for them to continue beyond the initial period. You must ask for that waiver extension prior to the end of the waiver date, and you complete the waiver extension section on the waiver form, upload it to IWDS. You would update IWDS with the current dates, the new date, complete the IEP modification form, and submit for state merit staff approval. And we will go through the whole waiver process and another training coming up. Waivers, no matter what, whenever they are revocated, they can be ended by several different ways. The participant can actually request the revocation of a waiver. If they are enrolled in training, the waiver expires, or it can be revoked for cause. No matter what the reason, the waiver revocation section on the waiver form must be completed and uploaded to IWDS. You must complete the IEP modification form and upload it to IWDS, and you would complete the training revocation letter, which is form 003D, for any of these reasons, and it must be sent to the participant for signature and returned to the career planner. And all of those dates and mailing of that and all that needs to be reported in case notes. And then if you're doing a revocation, then you would complete any of these other additional letters that are applicable, like a trade waiver termination letter if the participant requested it. If it's a non-compliance letter, then that would be the 3B. If that means the participant was non-compliant, or the trade potential suspension letter, form 3C, if the trade eligibility requirements are not being met. And we will cover all of these and other trainings. It's just there's so much information. We just want this to be an overview. So I know it's a lot, so don't try to get too confused by it. Ask questions if you have any, and we'll help you. And all of that has to be submitted to state merit staff approval for those revocations of those waivers. So after a waiver, ends or revocated, or if they don't get issued a waiver, but they want to go to training, then we're going to get into the training services. So training under trade is basically to provide workers that don't have sufficient skills to obtain suitable employment in the current labor market to gain those skills so they can become reemployed. And the allowable types of training under trade are, there's work-based training, which covers apprenticeships, on-the-job training, or customized training. For specific things related to the 2021 R participants, they must research work-based training opportunities first, and there has to be an explanation provided if the work-based training was not selected as that training program. So we will expect to see that information in the 6th condition case note for the approval of the training, what was researched as far as work-based training for those participants. There's institution training that includes training at like public area career and technical education schools, higher education, training and coursework at any accredited institution. There's remedial, adult basic education, English language acquisition, high school equivalency. There's prerequisite training, and prerequisite training under trade is that training that is required before the person can be accepted into the program. So one area where we see a lot of that is in like a nursing degree. They have to have these prerequisites before they can be accepted into, the LPN or the RN program. That is what prerequisite is. It's not taking biology 101 before you take biology 102 or 201, whatever it is. And then we can train for advanced degrees. Enrollment and training in the status on IWDS, it must take place and approved by state merit staff within the 30 days of the start date of the training. So, if you're within that 30 days, you can request that enrollment and training not yet started approval and the approval of all of that information. So that person is in a status of enrolled in training, not yet started. And then they can get their TRA, and then they can just start their training when they're supposed to they're scheduled to start, and everything can just roll on great. A participant is allowed only one training program per certification. If they happen to they were laid off from 2 separate certifications, then they would basically have 2 training programs that they could attend, but it's only one per certification. All training must be geared towards suitable employment, and suitable employment is defined as work of a substantially equal or higher level than the worker's past adversely affected employment, and wages for such work at not less than 80% of the worker's average weekly wage. So just something to keep in mind that, we don't want to train somebody for a lot lower program, And all training must meet specific training benchmarks every 60 days. That we will cover all of those in later training. The participant's family and or friends cannot pay anything towards the cost of the training program. And the training program must be completed within 130 actual training weeks. OJT training is limited to 104 weeks. If someone is enrolled under the 2009 program, then they do have the availability to have up to 156 weeks of training, but we have not seen anybody under that program for a while yet. On-the-job training, some of the work-based training, we're going to cover just a few of the training things, specifically work-based training. One of them is on-the-job training. Basically, on-the-job training, the person is hired, they're working in the work setting. Basically, they're getting trained while they are working at that particular employer. It's just to help them get those skills to be able to prepare them for that employment. And the training is limited to 104 weeks. And there's a whole set of forms and documents related to OJT that would need to be completed. There's an agreement, an invoice document, and a monitoring document. And so right here on the job training agreement, Form 8, you would have to complete that, upload it to IWDS. You would do the IEP. or the modification form if the OJT occurs later in their program. Complete your eligibility determination for their travel. And the travel one would only be needed if the participant travels outside the commuting area to work. And you also need the Google Maps printout to verify those miles. We always need the Google Maps printout. And for other forms that are required during the on-the-job training would be the on-the-job training invoice, Form 9, and the on-the-job training monitoring form, which is Form 10, throughout the program. There's customized training. We've not seen anyone request customized training. I mean, it is an option. Customized training basically meets the needs of a specific employer or a group of employers, and that employers must pay at least 50% of the total cost of the training, and they have to provide a commitment to hire those participants upon successful completion of that training. There also needs to be assurance from the employers that there is a prohibition to use those funds for the promotion or deterrence of union organizing. And you would also need to complete the Form 5 for that to, support any travel assistance that may be needed for the participant. We don't have specific forms for customized training. If someone does come into a situation like that, let us know. We'll work you through it, and we'll get it all worked out for you. One of the big topics of the day has been apprenticeships. The registered apprenticeships, it's just another kind of program that allows the person to, be employed and learn a career at the same time that they're employed and they're in their training. It's kind of like a combination of on-the-job training and classroom instruction is the way we look at it. They're employed at the beginning of it. They work through their series of, curricula that they have to attend in the actual related, the instructional part of it, and then they complete job functions to help them train as well. And the length will vary depending on the specific occupation, but again, under trade, it is still limited to 130 weeks, or once that worker reaches a suitable employment level, whichever comes first. And then it would have to be, the apprenticeship could be combined with WIOA funding or another source of funding to help continue that person through that apprenticeship process if they bump up to the 130 weeks or reach that suitable employment. So a lot of it's going to be a blended funding for an apprenticeship if we come across something like that. As I said, under training, there are 6 criteria that must be met for approval of the training program per the trade regulations. Criterion 1, there is no suitable employment available for the trade affected worker. Criterion 2, the trade affected worker would benefit from the appropriate training. 3, there's a reasonable expectation of employment following the completion of such training. And number 4, training is reasonably available to the trade affected worker. 5, the trade affected worker is qualified to undertake and complete such training. And 6, such training is suitable for the trade affected worker and available at a reasonable cost. Illinois also requires that the industry recognized credential that will be earned from the training is identified as a criterion 7, if it's applicable, and must be included in that criterion case note. We use the industry recognized credential information because it's a requirement for any participant who would need to be receive completion TRA to complete their training program. And if they're in a program that does not earn a industry recognized credential, then they will not be eligible for completion TRA. I have slides here that walk through each of these criterion, what it means, and for merit staff approval, what questions we want answered or need to be answered under this criterion in the case note that you generate for this. We will cover these more in depth when we go through the training piece of it. I'm not going to go through each of these specifically because you're all adults, you can read, but just kind of be mindful of these are all of the things that we would need to know about that training program or that participant to meet this criterion. So there's, like I said, all 6 of them are here. It describes, these are from the regulations, like what it means. And then we list what questions we want answered for that to meet that criteria. And what you would do is you would put like number 3 or criteria 3, answer those questions in your case note. Most of you have done those. We will provide a sample case note of what one would look like in our later trainings. Or if you've got a more experienced person that's worked with trade before in your area, reach out to them and they can give you some further information as well, or contact us and we can provide it as well. So the enrollment in training, if someone's getting enrolled in training, the forms you would need is your IEP, your verification of trade training enrollment signed by the training institution participant and the career planner. The latest signature on that form must be within that 30-day period of enrollment and training when you're requesting the enrollment and training approval. The tracking form, which is the form 6D or the 6E, and those two forms are a little different. The 6D is geared more towards like at a college or university where you have a series of classes that you have to take, like, okay, this semester, you know, like they'll say you should take these courses, this semester this. The 6E is kind of generally geared towards those programs. We see it a lot in the computer type of programs where they'll take, you know, this class for 3 or 4 days this week, and then there's a little break of a few days, and then they take another class a couple weeks later, you know, for 3 or 4 days. It's just kind of and sometimes they can earn certificates along the way for each of those training pieces. But, you know, feel free to look at those forms. We have a link in the information on where to find all the forms later. The form 5, which is your eligibility determination for travel assistance, and you need the Google Maps, of course, for any time you do that form 5. The forms must be completed and uploaded in IWDS for our review, and you submit to State Merit Staff for approval to enroll them in training. For the supplemental assistant, which is your transportation and subsistence or transportation travel, that must be reviewed each semester or as any changes occur. And some changes that could be made, changes to transportation could be for the participant moves, their residence location changes, that could change the distance that they're traveling. Training institution changes, you know, like they have to take a class at this other campus, you know, this semester, or, you know, something like that. That can change the distance that they're traveling. Revised GSA mileage reimbursement rate, and that happens in January 1st of each year. There's a GSA per diem rate change that happens in October 1st of each year. They switch from travel to subsistence. If they're, you know, traveling a really long distance, that's when they could potentially get subsistence versus travel. Or they switch their attendance from online to on-site or from on-site to online. That can make those things can make changes to what is projected to be paid for that transportation or subsistence for that participant. So any changes in that then need to be reviewed. And if there are changes, then that requires a processing of an IEP modification, and you would complete a new Form 5 for any new, any kind of changes as far as locations, distance traveled, whatever. You would upload that. You would do the Form 14A IEP modification form. You upload that to IWDS, and you would submit those changes to Merit Staff for approval. So under the transportation and subsistence categories, there are a couple of things related to when the participant was initially approved for receipt of that travel or transportation assistance. If they received initial approval prior to September 21st of 2020, which is the date that the new trade final rule went into effect, then they are reimbursed for travel of 10 miles or more one way between the residence and training institution site. So if someone travels, you know, 12 miles one way, you know, they get their reimbursement for the 24 miles for that round trip. That is, even if there was a break for, you know, during the pandemic, classes switched to online. Now they're traveling to the training institution again. If they were initially approved for the transportation prior to September 21st, 2020, they go back and they are still reimbursed at that same rate. If they were approved for transportation on or after September 21st, 2020, basically, to put it in a nutshell, their one-way mileage, you have to reduce by 10 miles. So if they travel 10.1 miles to this training institution, trade can pay for the 0.1 miles. for each way. It has anything over the 10 one way. So just keep that in mind. The forms for these particular items are very specific, and they do spell it out. And we will cover it more in depth later. But if you have questions, you can always ask us. So uploading documents, we've talked about that throughout a couple of these slides. The documents must be uploaded for the state merit staff to review. It gives us an idea of the picture of what's going on and helps us when we monitor a file later as well, because we've looked at a lot of the stuff and we can ensure that all of the information is there that we need to do those approvals. Do not attach documents to emails. Most of those documents have what we call personally identifiable information on them. That is why we have the upload feature in IWDS. We do not want documents in emails. We are not supposed to do that. If you could, when you're scanning documents to upload, please review them before you upload them and make sure that they're not upside down or they're not sitting sideways. It's hard to review a file that's sideways or upside down on the system. We'd appreciate that. And if you can fix them, that would be great. So when you're uploading documents for a new IEP and training approval request, this is the list of documents that you must include as a part of that approval process and must be uploaded. You can upload all of these as one complete document, everything all in one document. Just label it like individual employment plan, or you can individually upload each of these and select exactly what the form is. There are a list of the forms. All of these forms are there. You should be able to select whatever it is: the trade individual employment plan, the transportation, the training enrollment form. These two documents here, the IBIS documents, you can upload as unemployment information if you wanted, but you can do it a couple of ways. It doesn't matter to us if you upload everything as one complete document or if you separate the documents out. But these are the things that we need for a new IEP and training approval request. And in addition to the 6 criteria case note, and then all of your service and status records. For an IEP and waiver approval request, these are the forms that you would need to be uploaded. Again, they can be one document or they can be separate documents. An RTAA or an ATAA service, these are the 2 forms you would need. Again, one, usually these are, we see these separated a lot of times, most cases, but we will accept them as one document or not. And if you have IEP modifications, then one of the documents you would need to upload for anything for that would be the Form 14A. That's the individual employment plan modification form. Any other trade forms, like if there's a transportation change or there's a change in the class schedules, that would be the Form 6D or 6E, and any other forms or documents that are applicable to whatever modification is that you're requesting for approval. For date extensions, we are now requiring a current IBIS printout that shows the TRA weeks remaining, because we have to ensure that that person can complete that training within the allowable TRA weeks. That is just to help with some reporting things and to make sure that these people are able to successfully complete a program. We want them to be successful. We don't want them to get to a period and then, oh, well, I can't go on. We want to help them be successful and help them get reemployed and complete a program. And then case note requirements. A lot of people, okay, well, what do I case note? Everything. The case note should tell the story about what is happening with that participant. We don't need to know that their brother was sick yesterday or something like that. I'm just saying you need to walk through the whole process of what are you doing with that participant? What's happening, with their training? Are they progressing? What are they doing? There's a couple of things, and then if you have a case note, because I've seen this a couple of times, like they talk about, well, the participant contacted us about getting this or doing this or something like that. But then I don't see a subsequent case note that follows up on that communication, or what was the outcome of that, the determination, what they asked for. They were asking for this. Well, did it get handled, or what was the outcome for that? So kind of be mindful of that. It should tell the whole story about the whole progression through that participant's, trade experience. Be detailed, but do not include any personal, medical, or confidential information. That is not to be included in case notes. You can have that as a subsequent, file on site if you want, if you need to have that, but we don't need that information. And so there are things that are required in IWDS for working with these participants. The IEP status is a very key IWDS status. That is where it's like just setting up the whole process for the participant. So how you enter the IEP status is there is an entry made of an individual employment plan service record on the services side of IWDS. And when you save that, it will automatically transfer that career planner to that IEP status record for completion. That must be completed. We've had situations where people have not completed that IEP status record. They just close it out and not complete it. Well, then there's not a complete record in the system. And we have to have that status record because that's what drives a lot of the stuff for that participant. That's where you're going to put your modification information. You're going to put the initial information, and you're going to get the initial approval of that status record to help serve that participant. In that IEP status record, you're going to add a dated comment, and the date needs to be the first thing in there. In that comment box for any new IEPs or any revisions, modifications to that IEP. And you don't have to put the entire amount of information about what you're changing on that record of the modification. You can just put a blurb that says, modifying for transportation changes, see case note dated, if you want. That's all you got to put. That box is limited to a point. So at some point, if you have a lot of modifications for a person, or if you put a lot of data in that box, it will end up at some point. We've had it where we've had to delete some information out of it to shorten it so that they can put additional information. So just be mindful of that. We don't need the whole story in that box, but we do need a little blurb that kind of describes what that modification is for. So just kind of be mindful. And it's always helpful if you put the most recent modification or the comment at the top of the box, like above the latest, above the last one. And on the IEP status also, there is an IEP amount approved box that needs to be updated as applicable. And in that box, you only include trade costs, which is like tuition fees, books, travel, supplies, relocation. Do not include any WIOA costs that are paid for that participant in that IEP amount approved box. You're going to enter your case notes in IWDS for the whole progression of the participant through the program. Double check your service start and end dates that you enter on IWDS, on forms and emails and case notes. Make sure those match. We have several instances where the dates aren't matching, and then we have to send emails back and say, well, what do you mean by this? These dates aren't matching up. So just be mindful of that and try to watch those dates and make sure they match before you send it to us. Double check everything, please. Ensure everything's entered in IWDS. Required forms are uploaded prior to sending to merit staff for approval. It takes a lot of time from us and you to do other things if we have to keep sending emails back and forth. And if you have a question before you send it to us, please let us know. We'll certainly walk you through that and help you out if you need it. So during training for a participant, they have to do a biweekly verification of trade training attendance. That's the Form 6A. Most of you have probably seen it. It is due to the career planner 2 business days after the end of the 2-week training period. The participant portion of that, which is all the information at the top. There's a couple questions they have to answer. The courses should be listed on it, and their signature must be on it. That has to be completed and submitted, even if the participant is only attending online courses. So that is very important. And online attendance, we'll talk about in a minute, it has to be documented as well. So the career planner should review these forms to ensure that that form is complete, to see if the participant missed any classes, or anything. If the instructor has answered the questions about the participant's progress or attendance. And for online class attendance, verification is included if it's applicable, and the instructor email that verifies their attendance and their progression through that, or some sort of a Blackboard printout or electronic printout from the school. But there are requirements that need to be met for those online attendance verifications as well. You know, for the online attendance, they have to supply that 2-week period. It has to show, you know, the 2-week period, the participant's name, the class. You know, we have to have that information, and it has to be documented that they are truly attending that. Attendance case notes, we'll provide some samples on those when we do the attendance training session. They must be entered for every 2-week period during the training, and you'll indicate whether they were received with no absences. If they failed to provide verification of attendance, then, you know, that requires entry of a ceased participation. If they have missing sheets or revised ones are received, you update that. And then, you know, there's a whole process for that if they do not provide that verification of attendance. If they fail to attend the training classes or any other training activities that the training institution has scheduled, that requires entry of a ceased participation. We do have a policy on ceased participations, and when we cover all of these training breaks and all of that, we will go through the whole process of how to do those ceased participations. There are, you know, if the instructor cancels classes or any class or classes, or if, you know, the training institution is closed for whatever reason, you know, you just need to identify why the person wasn't in class for those days. Some of them require ceased participation, some of them do not. Like it says down here, ceased participation is not required if it's a campus-wide closure for a holiday, a scheduled break that's on the institution calendar. If it's a scheduled break on the institution calendar, that does require an entry of like a payable training interruption. There can be weather or other issues. I think there was an electrical issue at a college one time, so the college had to close. Those don't require ceased participations, but they must be noted on those attendance sheets and in your case notes for that attendance period. Okay, if there are training breaks, a payable training interruption, that means basically they will still get paid their TRA for that period of time. And that is a break in training that is 30 countable days or less. Those are entered for training breaks like between the semesters generally, and you would use the academic calendar to put those to use as the dates for the beginning and end of those. Vacation break is a break in training that's more than 30 countable days. So vacation breaks do require merit staff approval. Payable training interruptions do not. We do ask that you do enter those breaks timely. Is very important because a vacation break will cause the temporary stoppage of pay of TRA. Payable training interruptions do not, but we do need those timely entered. And a vacation break does require merit staff approval as well and an IEP modification. So a ceased participation, the regulations state that a worker shall be determined to have ceased participation in a training program when the worker fails to attend all scheduled training classes and other training activities scheduled by the training institution in any week of the training program without justifiable cause. So basically what these are, participant fails to provide verification of the attendance, or a participant fails to attend the training classes as scheduled. Those would require ceased participations to be entered. You know, like I said, we want timely entry. These are, there can be administrative law judge determinations made on these generally, and they will come back. There's sometimes hearings that are held. These are adjudicated by IWDS staff, and it could cause TRA overpayments if they are not entered in a timely manner. And we don't want the participants to have a TRA overpayment. Now, there is something, a step up from a ceased participation. It's called a potential suspension request. The following conditions will dictate when you need to enter a potential suspension request in IWDS. If the participant was issued a waiver from training and they refused suitable employment, that is a potential suspension request condition that must be entered in the system. And there's, we'll talk about how to enter those in another training later. If the participant enrolled in training but failed to start for whatever reason, You know, we have seen this happen. If they're in training and they cease participation, either they drop below full time or they quit, that is a potential suspension request. There is a caveat to that. The 2021R participants are actually allowed to attend part-time training without, potentially without affecting their eligibility for TRA, but those determinations are all going to be made over by IWDS. But there is that under 2021R. They do have the possibility of attending part-time training and still receiving their TRA. But that's only for those particular 2021 participants. If the participant did not meet one of the qualifying requirements for eligibility in a trade or TRA program, you know, I've not seen that happen yet, but it is potential, you know, say something was not right and maybe they really weren't a part of the worker group, or, you know, for whatever reason, you know, I don't know. Those would be very few and far between. Benchmarks were not met, no completion TRA. That, you know, that is a potential suspension request. They're you know, failing their classes. They, you know, just they can't complete whatever. There's a couple of different things, and we'll cover all these benchmarks and you know, we'll cover all these reasons at a later training. When you do a potential suspension request, you need to complete the Form 003 potential suspension letter and send it to the participant. You'll enter that potential suspension request status in IWDS, and the start date of that potential suspension request must match the date of that 003C potential suspension request letter. And you have to include a dated comment in that comment box on the potential suspension request status, detailing the reason for the entry. And if you have to request merit staff approval. We talked about benchmarks. The purpose is they're required by the trade regs for completion TRA, and completion TRA is they get 13 weeks of completion TRA that could be payable to help that participant to complete that full-time training program that leads to that degree or industry recognized credential, provided they have met the 60-day benchmarks. We require the benchmarks entry from day one, so every 60 days, because what happens if you have a participant who goes through a training program and they get up to the point where they might need completion TRA? You're not going to be able to go back and, you know all of those 60-day benchmarks that happened from the beginning of that program up to this point. So that's why we require them to be entered from day one, because there could be someone who needs this completion TRA, and there are a lot of people that do need it to complete their program. And those 60-day benchmarks, there's two criteria that must be met that DOL requires: that the person is meeting satisfactory academic standing. You know, they're getting passing grades, they're enrolling in the required classes when they're offered, they're getting those classes completed in the time frame allotted, on track to complete within the agreed upon time frame. You know, based upon the merit staff approved plan training end date, are they on track to complete within that time frame? Now, we can do date extensions. If we do date extensions, then the benchmarks need to be entered that the modification is being done for those. You know, this is why they can't complete. You know, the training institution canceled the classes. They can't, you know, get them during this semester or whatever. So it's, you know, there's various reasons, but they could still get their completion TRA, even though there might be, you know, potentially, even if there was a date extension, as long as those benchmarks clearly outline that. Benchmarks need to be entered at the end of each semester, in addition to the regular 60-day benchmarks. This is one area that we see not happening a lot. These benchmarks need to be entered that include the grades that were earned for that semester. And each time you enter a benchmark, it resets the 60-day period. But we want to see these end of semester ones. We need to know how that person is progressing through that program, what grades they're earning. Also, you should update that Form 6D and E as classes are completed and grades are received for them. Keep those updated. There's to benchmark, the benchmark tracking report in IWDS. There is one out there. It's under the reporting menu, TAA monitoring, 60-day training review. And this is how you would do it. You enter your OWIA and the number of days. We kind of suggest 55, and it'll show how many days that have been since the last review. And if it's 60 or more, then you need to do a review. And you will see Susan generally, sometimes I'll send them out like, hey, you're overdue on a 60-day review. So we try to remind you, but you can do this yourself. You don't have to wait on a reminder, but please do your best to keep up on these. They need to be completed within those 60 days. Another service that's available to participants is your alternative or reemployment trade adjustment assistance. The ATAA is available for 2021R participants. All of the participants receive RTAA. There are some differences. Basically, they are both a wage supplement that's provided to eligible workers that are 50 or older. And it supplements the portion of the wage difference between their new wage and their old wage. If they're in an employment that does not exceed $50,000 per year, it's basically about, it's generally calculated as 50% of the difference that they get. They do not have to be, anybody enrolled in ATAA, RTAA do not need to be assessed for basic skills deficiency because they are getting reemployed. And to receive ATAA, RTAA, they must do a Form 11, which is the it's an RTAA application that is sent to IDES for approval first. And then once you get that approval back from them, then you would request merit staff approval. You would need to upload that complete Form 01011 that's signed by IDES trade unit. You would need to complete the IEP form if it's not already completed, or do the modification form if an IEP was already established and now it's new service that they're getting. And you would upload those to IWDS and you would request merit staff approval. We give the approval after IDES has approved that application for RTAA. Some things to keep in mind when you're doing ATAA, RTAA, the start date of that service record is the IDES approval signature date that's on that Form 11. So keep that in mind. And we've seen some issues with the planned end date on the service record for these. It must match the end date of the eligibility period that is on that Form 11. It's on generally the page before the signature for IDES, but it has the eligibility period on it. But that planned end date needs to match that date that's listed there. When you're ending an ATAA, RTAA service in IWDS, it must be the later of the last payment date or exhaustion date. So generally that date will be provided by IDES in an email. They'll say, okay, this person's, this is the last payment for this person. They don't have any more, available to them. This, they'll tell you when the payment was made, or this person's exhausted their eligibility period for RTAA. That date is the date you use to be the end date for that service. ATAA is specific to the 2021R program participants. It also cannot be combined with training. So for instance, if someone is receiving, they cannot receive ATAA after they've received TRA. So if they've been in a training program, they aren't eligible for ATAA. They cannot receive TRA after ATAA. So if they receive ATAA, then they can't go to training. So that's a caveat, the difference between a 2021R participant or any other participant, because other participants can receive RTAA, but it is limited. If they have received TRA, then they won't get the whole 10,000 amount. It's all calculated by IDES. We don't try to figure it out. We let them do that. Another benefit that we don't see used very often is job search. It's a service that can cover expenses for someone who may have a job interview in an area outside of the normal commuting area, and in Illinois, the commuting area is 10 miles. So someone has a job interview, they can get reimbursed for the transportation to that job interview, as long as it's for a job that, is going to be for suitable employment, because they can't find employment in their local commuting area. It does need to be pre-approved. So it has to be approved by merit staff before they go to the job interview. The forms that are required are Form 12 for the job search. They have to have the job interview confirmation letter. they need to do, we have to have an IEP or an IEP modification form as applicable. All of that has to be uploaded to IWDS. And after the participant attends that interview, then there needs to be a completed reconciliation of the trade job search allowance, Form 12A, that's uploaded to IWDS. And all of this has to have merit staff approval. And other forms that might be required for other job search activities, because it's not just job interviews they can go to. There's verification if they go to a job fair or an OEA workshop. So those are some other activities that they can attend. And again, we would need the IEP or the IEP modification form as applicable and uploaded IWDS and merit staff approval requested. There's also a relocation assistance service that can pay for expenses to relocate the worker, their family, and their household goods outside of the normal commuting area if they have found suitable employment. And again, the commuting area is 10 miles in Illinois. The worker must have an actual documented bona fide offer of work. So there has to be like a letter or something that says, yes, they've accepted, we want to hire you. The forms that need to be filled out for relocation are the application, Form 13, a new employment confirmation letter, or if they have an actual letter from the employer stating, we want you to, this is your start date, you are, we're employing you, that can be, will take the place of this confirmation letter. We need the individual employment plan or modification form as applicable. Those have to be uploaded. Once the relocation has occurred, then a reconciliation of those, that allowance has to be completed and uploaded to IWDS. Both require merit staff approval. And those again must be pre-approved. Got to be done before the move of the worker. There is a benefit available to the participants called healthcare tax credit. This is administered by the IRS, although sometimes we have heard that the IRS, people have contacted them and they don't know what they're talking about, but it is administered by the IRS. It's a tax credit that pays 72.5% of any qualified health insurance premiums for eligible individuals and their families. It doesn't provide health insurance coverage, but it's kind of a credit on their taxes for any premiums that they have paid. That, the trade affected worker has to have obtained their own insurance. It is set to expire December 31st of this year. The last several years that it's expired, they have extended it. So we never know until we get up to that deadline, whether, they're going to extend it or not. So we do refer everyone to this website, the IRS, for it. We know nothing about it. Sometimes they do need a letter from IDES to show that they were eligible. And IDES does send the eligible participant information to the IRS for this. There is veterans preference and military service related to training for participants. However, this military service piece is not available to 2021R participants. The veterans preference basically is that they, veterans do have a priority of service over other participants. They do have to meet the eligibility requirements, of course, to meet that veterans preference. And the military service is if someone is basically in training and something happens and they have to go serve some sort of, perform some sort of military service, then, they can come back and resume their training. They can receive some TRA. So it's just kind of like a break in training for military service. But if you have anyone that's in that situation, just let us know. We can work you through that. I don't know if we've had anybody that I can recall, but I'm sure there are cases where that happens. Every participant who has some sort of a determination for a benefit or service has the right to appeal that determination. Trade provides for them that, for that service, if they're dissatisfied with that determination for any application for any benefit or service. The appeal right is the same as provided under state unemployment insurance law. We do have the appeals language on most trade forms that are for a determination of a service or benefit. The appeals are adjudicated at IWDS by an administrative law judge. Sometimes what you'll see is we'll send you a notice, and most career planners will receive a notice to attend a hearing. So usually a phone hearing if someone in their area, if their participants have appealed. Like I said, the career planners are usually required to attend. Susan and I usually do not have to attend except in special circumstances. And so the trade merit staff provision that's in place in Illinois, the TAA final rule that was effective September 21st of 2020 requires that all reviews of benefit determinations under applicable state law must be completed by state staff. All determinations on eligibility for trade program benefits must be made by state staff as well. So in Illinois, those state merit staff duties are divided between DCEO and IWDS. DCEO state merit staff make the final approvals for trade services except for the ATAA and RTAA. IWDS state merit staff approve ATAA, RTAA, UI, and TRA benefits. So nothing really changed with this. So it's just operating the way we've always operated, but it's just, that's what it says in the regulations as far as how those determinations have to be done. Career planners must complete and upload all the documents that are necessary for the review and approval of a request. They have to make the IWDS entries and request state merit staff approval prior to the start of the trade service or benefit. So the prior to is the very key component to this. We are required to approve them, prior to the start dates of anything. There are circumstances where that cannot happen. So we do have the option of the equitable tolling, extenuating circumstance, if we need to use it, but we want to limit the use of that if at all possible. There are some credentials and measurable skills gains that are required to be entered. We as a state are required to report to DOL comprehensive performance accountability measure information to them on a regular basis, quarterly or annually. Two of the measures that we use as a part of those are the credential attainment and measurable skills gains that we need to have those entered. So credential attainments, when that person completes their training program and they earn that credential, you're going to enter that in IWDS when they achieve it under the credentials section. Also, when you are exiting a person, that credential needs to be entered on the exit summary screen when they're exited, because it will not report to DOL properly if it is not entered on the exit summary screen. If for some reason after you exit the person and then you obtain a copy of the credential later, you can update that exit summary screen after you've exited that participant if that credential is attained. And the attained can, they can attain it like within 1 year after exit, or if your verification is received after exit, or you just forgot to enter it. You can go in and update that exit summary screen. So please be mindful of that and enter those credentials, especially on that exit summary screen, because that is what drives the report to DOL. That's where the information comes from on IWDS. Measurable skills gains, that is a new feature a few years ago. Each program year that someone is entered in trade, or as they are successfully progressing and participating in that program, then the measurable skills gain needs to be entered. They need to enter at least once a year. However, they can be entered every time a person receives a gain. If they get something, they've achieved a new skill gain or something every semester, or every quarter, whatever. You can enter them as often as they achieve them. That's a very good idea because it shows they're making good progress. For the co-enrolled participants in the trade, so the trade and WIO, those MSGs unfortunately must be entered on both the trade and WIO applications. There's no mechanism to report them on one and carry them over to the other. So please enter them on both of the applications for that person. For reporting purposes, only one MSG is required per program year, but we were asking that you record all of them so we can show that that participant has made significant progression through their program. Report cards, transcripts for secondary school or full-time participation in post-secondary school are only required once per program year. However, you know, like we said, record them each semester. They have a successful full-time report or transcript. For part-time students, the measurable skills gain is recorded after they complete at least 12 credit hours over 2 semesters during that 12-month period. So that's kind of the rules. We got these from the performance section on how to do this. So if you have any questions, reach out to us or the performance area. Okay. Oh, okay.
Data credential must be in program or up to 1 year after exit to count.
Okay, does everyone see Paula's comment in the chat box? It says the date of the credential must be in the program or up to 1 year after exit to count as a positive. So, you know, when you're doing those credentials, please keep that in mind and, you know, work on trying to get those credentials. You know, part of the release of information that the participant signs should include the ability for you to contact the training institution to obtain those copies of those credentials. Because I know sometimes some participants, they complete the training and then they just lose all contact with the career planner. They're like, okay, we're done. You know, I don't need to do anything else. But you know, that credential is really important to us because then that shows, you know, we have successfully helped that person achieve something. And it's good, you know, it makes us look good, and you know, we get credit for the things that you've done. You know, you get credit for it, we get credit for it as a state. So it's good. Okay, so the 2021 are program differences. So the certifications only cover the listed workers on that. Does not automatically include on-site leased workers or temporary agency workers, as previous certifications have done. It's for manufacturing sector workers only. And the enrollment deadlines are different. It's the 8th week from certification or the 16th week from the last total qualifying separation. So that those are very key. That means they're going to have to act very fast. They must submit a trade form 004. That's a 2021R trade bona fide application for training. It must be submitted, you know, signed, completed within 210 days of the later of the date of certification or the date of the worker's total or partial separation. Generally, we are saying this should be done at the same time as the BRO, so that way you'll have both of those documents that are required at the same time. It's, you know, a good idea to have them both at the same time. So, you know, you've got them right there, get them both done. The 45-day extenuating circumstances and equitable tolling are the only ones available that can be used to extend enrollment deadlines for these participants as well. The alternative trade adjustment assistance is specific to the 2021R participants only. They cannot get OJT along with ATAA, cannot combine training with ATAA, and they cannot access trade benefits and services prior to separation. In other programs, participants can access services prior if they are a threatened worker, but not under 2021R. The military service exceptions to deadlines, training duration, etc., are removed. Trade case management funds cannot be provided to the OES to assist in providing services to those. We will fund those under another funding mechanism. Part-time training with TRA payments is allowable. That determination as to whether they will receive those will be made by IWDS, not us. And work-based training is the preferred method of training. Information on the search for work-based training will be required to be included in a 6 criteria case note, along with a justification for not selecting a work-based training opportunity. If that's the case, that will be required for anyone falls under this. And something I did not mention is these 2021R, those participants will be served under petitions 98,000 plus. Just that is the key thing to remember. If they are being served under 98,000 plus, that is a 2021R participant. Some helpful IWDS reports that you may, want to look at. Days since last active service. This report will identify the last date of a service a participant has received. You can sort by WIOA or trade. You can sort by a specific number of days or no days. It's very helpful because participants are required to receive an active service within, in every 90 days. If not, then DOL believes that they're not being served and they should be exited. Participants with days since last case note. Case notes should be entered at least on a minimum every 30 days. This report will display the length of time since the last case note entry, and they're required to have monthly case notes. Because you're going to be working with them to get the attendance sheets if they're in training. So, there should be at least a case note for that. You should be getting those every 2 weeks. There's a 60-day training review that shows, how long it's been since the last 60-day review was entered in IWDS. So, keep that in mind and make sure you keep those reviews up to date. 30-day waiver review, it'll show you if, someone is outside the 30 days of getting a review entered in the system. How long has it been since the last 30-day review for that waiver? Make sure you stay on top of those. And forms. So there are a couple of ways you can get to the forms in our e-policy portal on Illinois WorkNet. And here is that site. You can go to chapter 11, section 1 under general. And over here under policy references, there is a link to the trade program forms. Always double check the WorkNet site for the most recent version of the forms. We do have some changes that are going to be uploaded to that site for some forms as we're going through this training, and as we present those forms, we will put those out there to be used. So always double check that site first, get that most recent version of that form before you start working with that participant. And here's the site where you can get those on WorkNet. This should take you to the same site this is if you go to the policy portal, where you can just go directly to here. So just some general comments on correspondence. On emails, when you're sending emails regarding trade participants to state merit staff, always include these three individuals: Susan Boggs, myself, and Lori Graham. Lori does provide a backup to Susan and myself if we need her to review some information, or if we're tied up on projects where we happen to be out of the office. So always include those three individuals on any emails regarding specific questions on trade participants for approvals or anything like that. If you have any emails or correspondence regarding trade grants, those go to Crystal Bigelow, and here is her email address. Just send those directly to her. If she needs to get any of us involved, she will make sure she forwards that on to us. We always ask that you include a clear subject line that includes not only the LWIA number, the purpose of the email, and the participant name. So here's an example: LWIA 10, IEP and new occupational training approval request 4, and put the participant name. Because generally when we have to search for an email that has occurred 6 months ago, we will put in that participant name, and it's very easy for us to find if we need to find it, if we need some information from that. And this tells us clearly what we're looking at. When we open that email, what are we looking for? Do not combine information in emails for multiple participants. If you have questions on 2 different participants, each email should be for that particular participant only, because it's too confusing to keep it all straight. Just keep it, limited to one participant. If you are sending emails, emails are going back and forth for a participant on various topics or various items for that participant, always keep that whole email chain intact. Don't do another email don't start another email. Just keep all of that intact so we have all of the information that we need as we're progressing through this. One thing to keep in mind as well, always hit reply to all. Susan, myself, Lori, we all three need all the information related to the whole entire email chain. Just makes, if one of us sends something back, we've got the other ones on it. Make sure you reply to all so everyone gets the information. Because like sometimes, I may send something back and then I may be out of the office for a few days. Well, then Susan can handle that request, or vice versa, or Lori can. That way we can all be on the emails. We can handle it as quickly as we can to help you better and get these people approved for the services and benefits that they need. So on request for approvals, find the last state merit staff approval email received for that participant, if applicable. If you haven't sent any approval emails, then obviously you wouldn't have it. Find that email, select forward, and then add the recipients. Send the email to the state merit staff, those three of us. Do not include attachments that contain personally identifiable information. You upload the related documents in IWDS on the list all documents screen. Add the new request to the top of the last state merit staff approved email in the proper format. And we've provided formats before of how you will request things. We will provide formats at future trainings. Verify dates in your emails, IWDS service and status records, and case notes match. And please use the proper formats that we will provide in a document at a later training. This helps us look through that and know what we're looking at and know exactly what we're approving. And it just helps. It will just lessen the time that it will take for our review. If we return an email from state merit staff, like we have a question, or hey, can you fix this, or something like that, please keep that whole entire email chain intact. Just reply to all. If there are attachments, then you'll need to forward the email and add the participant, the email, who you're sending it to. You'll have to add those names back in, so we can keep that attachment. But generally, most times the attachment should be uploaded to IWDS and not attached to the email. Again, don't send attachments that contain PII in them. And then quarterly, there's a taper report that needs to be completed. This is quarterly costs that are uploaded to IWDS, and it's the quarterly cost for each participant that were paid for that quarter. The total costs uploaded to IWDS must match the total cost reported in GRS for the same quarterly period. We cannot stress this enough. What you will do, and there will be a training on the taper later. It's towards the end of all of our sessions. If those costs do not match, then there's something wrong. I mean, it has to match to the penny. Whatever's in GRS is where you would start, and you determine who were those costs for, and you would put that on the taper report that you're going to upload to IWDS. Only trade costs should be included. No costs paid by any other sources, such as WIOA. And when you're doing a final cost revision for a participant, please double check that this view TAA costs information total here, it's under your exit information on the main application menu. Make sure this total matches what the IEP amount approved is on the IEP status, and your email, and this total here. They need to match for a final cost reconciliation or revision. If they don't match, then please identify why they don't match, and if there's a corresponding entry that's going to be made to the next taper report that's going to be uploaded to IWDS. And then we get into active program service for participants. So an active service is defined as a service provided to a participant that has taken place within the last 90 consecutive days. So when determining whether the 90 days have elapsed since they last received the services, you do not include the receipt by the participant of any self-service, information-only service or activity, or follow-up service, okay? It's like if the person comes in to do an independent job or information seeking thing on system at your local area, you know, that's a self-service. Information only service, you know, they're available information. It doesn't require any kind of assessment by a staff member of the individual's, oh boy, that's individual's kills. Okay, I'm going to update some slides because I've got some typos I've noticed on here. Education or career objectives. So those are not what we consider an active service. An active service also does not include services and activities specifically provided as follow-up, such as regular contact to obtain information on employment, educational progress, need for additional services, and income support payments, except for the TRA and other needs related payments. So keep those in mind. And your case notes, if it's not an active service or whatever, you know, or you know, don't say that you're putting in a case note supporting same day service, you know, put it as general, whatever. It's got to be an active service. And there is a document that outlines that. So just keep those in mind, that you do not put it in as an active service. If they're not receiving an active service for a period of 90 consecutive days and there's no gap in service and they're not scheduled for any future services, then those participants need to be exited. You know, they can be exited as soon as it's known there's no other active services are necessary, or once all costs have been reported in GRS and IWDS. You do need to make sure that TRA payments have ended for this participant, and you can confirm that with IDES. So timely exits are very important. If you have any questions about exiting a participant, Paula Berry is your expert. I would say email is the best way to reach her at this point, because a lot of people are working remotely, including herself, so she may not be available at this phone number at all times. So I would email her if you have any questions about an exit. Susan and I are not the experts on exiting participants. We don't claim to be. So that's why we have put this information here. Please contact Paula for more information about exiting. So I know you're all wondering, where's all of our new trade policy, right? From our new final rule last year. Yes, the rules were issued September 21st of 2020, over a year ago. We have worked very diligently on updating policy and procedures. And I don't know if any of you have gone through this process before. We have found it to be very interesting, challenging at best. And you will work on one policy and come across a topic and go, oh, wait, that's going to affect this policy over here that we thought we had finalized, or, oh, wait, what about this that affects this policy over here? So we thought we had some finalized, and then we're like, wait, we got to change something there. We got to change this. So we're working diligently. We do see the light at the end of the tunnel. We do have to get our policies finalized here. We also have to run them through our policy area and through DOL for approval. We really, truly hope to have them out before the end of this year. I mean, we want them out sooner than that, but I'll tell you, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, because we want to make it the best it can be and give you as much information as you possibly need so that you can function within this program. So know that we are working on it. We have sent some emails regarding some updates to policies and forms to you previously, and continue to look for those, but we are definitely working on getting our policy and procedures finalized. Here are some websites, the trade forms. You will see on this trade form website, there are some videos and stuff that are out there as well that they have added to that page. So the forms are down lower on the page. Here's the Department of Labor Employment and Training trade site. There's IWDS, the GSA. So when you need to look up the per diem and mileage rates for someone, and Workforce GPS, this site has a lot of great Trade 101 resources that DOL has put together. And I mean, I encourage you to go to that site and look over some of that information. It's very great. You know, we couldn't put everything that they had in here, but definitely go to that site and sign up for that Workforce GPS thing. They have a lot of good resources there. And here are your DCEO trade unit contacts. Of course, Susan Boggs, myself, Crystal, and Lori Graham. I have put phone numbers here for myself and Lori Graham. We do have state issued cell phones, so these are available to call during the day, even if we're working remotely. Susan and Crystal do not have state issued cell phones, so the best way to contact them is email. We do prefer email for most of the communication so that we have a record of what information we have provided in case someone may need it later down the road. But we are available. Myself and Lori, you can call us. These are our state numbers, so feel free to call us if you need us. These are the IDES trade unit contacts: John Barry, Eric Hack, Angela Mosley, and Amy Samur. And this is their main phone number. And then here are their email addresses if you do need to contact them for IDES issues or information. And here are the upcoming trade training sessions that we have. We're doing these on Thursdays. They're going to be through the Zoom meeting platform like we've done today. Invitations they've been sent out by Kirsten at ISU. And here's the upcoming training session. Next week, October 21st, we are going to go through the petition certification process and rapid response. We could potentially have someone from the rapid response unit make a presentation at that one. They're reviewing the slides now and making that determination as to if there was any information that they want to present at this time. October 28th, we're going to cover eligibility, enrollment, agent liable, and 2021R program differences. November 4th, we'll cover waivers and completion of the waiver form. November 18th, we are going to cover the training component of this. We're going to walk through the completion of the Form 6, trade training enrollment form, the Form 5, the eligibility determination for the travel subsistence assistance, and the program tracking forms, Form 6D or E. We take a break in there because of Thanksgiving. Nobody wants to attend training on Thanksgiving, and I don't want to present it on Thanksgiving. December 2nd, we will come back with attendance, benchmarks, breaks in training, including completion of the biweekly training attendance form. December 9th, we'll cover the ATAA, RTAA program. If we can, we will get the representatives from IWDS to help present that. I will have to reach out to them to see if they're available for that day to give some presentation on that, so you have a little more information since they're the experts. December 16th, we will cover credential and measurable skills gains and exiting of participants. January 6th, the taper and GRS. This one will probably be geared more towards the fiscal staff. They're responsible for those GRS entries and uploading of those quarterly taper costs in IWDS. So, we will probably send that invitation out to those fiscal staff as well, but all of you are welcome to attend that one. Even if you're not a fiscal person, there needs to be communication between the program staff, career planners, and the fiscal office to make sure all of the costs are proper, that they have all the information in the fiscal office about what, in case they need to deobligate funds or add additional funds to the obligation for them. They need to be, both sides need to be involved. And then January 13th, we will cover appeals, fraud, overpayments, and monitoring. And those are the ones we have scheduled at this point. If there is additional training that you feel you need, or a topic that you want covered in more detail, please reach out to us, send us an email, let us know. We can definitely put something together to present to you. I've tried to cover all of the areas that we covered in the 101 separately, but if you feel you need more information or another training on something else, one of these sessions somewhere in here I will put in for covering IEP modifications and how to handle a lot of those. I'm just trying to figure out where to been a lot of chat questions come through, and we will pull that off and do the Q&A. If we open the phone lines, then Kirsten, then I guess we can have anybody ask any questions verbally if they want. And I hope that was very helpful to everyone today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sheila. So we only have this until 11:30. Is
Okay.
that correct? So I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we have saved the chat. If you do have any questions in the chat, please, or if you have any further questions, please feel free to post those in the chat. We will be saving those. And Sheila and Susan can do the FAQ. If you would like to stay on, if your schedule allows for you to stay on, we are happy to stay on with you. And you can feel free to ask any questions and unmute yourselves. But if you do need to leave, then we respect your time and we want you to feel free to do so. So everyone is saying great job and thank you. I think most people asked their questions in the chat.
Okay.
And we will save those for the FAQ.
Yes, and we will get it out as soon as we can, as soon as we get it, and then we can work through it and make sure it's in a good, format of question and answer and cover everything. And if there's duplicate, we'll put it together or whatever, but we'll just make sure that it's a nice little format for everyone, and we'll get it posted so everyone has it. And we hope to see you next week for the petition certification rapid response process, and hopefully the rapid response team can provide some more information if they feel they want to at that event, just to kind of help out, to help the OE is out with some more information.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sheila and Susan, and to everyone for attending today. And I have gone ahead and saved the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out.
Paige, in answer to your question, we will work with Paula and that group, and we will work on trying to get something put together for you guys for that. Yep, Susan just said that. We'll compile and send out. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. I guess if there's no questions, I guess we're done for the day. And I will fix my errors in my PowerPoint presentation, and I will send out a new version. Kirsten, is that something I should do through you, or?
Yep, you're going to send that straight to me. That'd be great.
To you, and then we'll post it and everybody can get it that way.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye.